So we definitely have a lot of things to talk about from episode 5, and I must admit that it's actually nice to see the new folks shaking things up a bit for the people trapped in this place who have become quite content with the way things are there. And also, of course, we will be talking about Crazy Sara, cause yeah, I think that's gonna be my new name for her, Crazy Sara. But anyway, let's get into it with episode 5, Silhouettes. So the episode starts off with Nathan being notified about Sara having a seizure at the diner. And he takes off like a bat out of hell, and I actually wasn't expecting the guy to be that damn fast. So yeah, obviously Nathan used to run track back in the real world. But then we cut back to the clinic with Christy and Sara, where we find out that Christy is insisting that Sara stays overnight, just to make sure, you know, she's okay. Which we already know she is definitely not okay. Then Boyd walks in to ask Christy about the jitters in his hand that by this time I've assumed is Parkinson's disease. And he clearly knows what it is as well, but he proceeds to ask Christy about the possibilities of it being the town since Sara and Ethan have both had seizures. And he also asks Christy what's the possibilities of the town having a physical reaction on people, where a disease might be one thing in the outside world but maybe appear as something different in the town. And of course in this scene Christy just doesn't have the answer because that was a complicated question that no one there currently has the answer to. But she does offer to check it out, which Boyd declines and basically dismisses the idea altogether. So yeah, in this scene Boyd is just looking for a little hope. He knows exactly what's happening to him, but he just wants to explore the possibility of there being a different result, which is completely understandable because who wants to deal with a disease like that, especially in a situation like this? And if I'm being honest, I'm a little salty about the writers giving Boyd Parkinson's disease while he's forced to have to fight off fucking ghost vampire crow monsters. I mean, this will make things extremely difficult for him in this place moving forward. And if they kill off the one guy who's clearly carrying the show on his back, I don't know if I'll still be watching. And of course I'm getting way too ahead of myself right now with this rant, but I'm just saying. But anyway, back to the recap. So Nathan shows up at the clinic wanting to check on Sara, but she doesn't want to see him. So Boyd assures him that she'll be in good hands overnight with Christy and that he should come back tomorrow. Then we cut to the Matthews family where Jim hands out Sharpies and suggests that they should all write out their questions on the walls so they can clearly establish the things that they know and don't know about the town. And Jim starts it off with the first question, which is, where are we? Then we jump back to Nathan sitting in front of the bloody dress that Sara wore the night she went batshit and started killing everyone. And in this scene, of course, he's more than likely beginning to worry that someone will soon find out about what she did. Afterwards, we actually cut back to Sara and Christy at the clinic where they chop it up about the significant others they left behind. We also find out that Christy was engaged, and that's why she hasn't been too crazy about moving forward with Kenny. Personally, I think Kenny will eventually get his chances with Christy because she's only been there for about 6 months. And there's still that little bit of hope that, you know, she might get back home to her fiance. But if they end up stuck there a bit longer, I'm sure things will change, assuming they both survive. Then Sara hints at having a possible toxic relationship previously and how it's just her and Nathan now. She also talks about how things weren't going well for her in the outside world and how Nathan had to save her. So it sounds to me like Sara may have been having suicidal thoughts before she got there, and having to deal with a lot of those internal challenges possibly made her more susceptible to the monsters, you know, since she's able to hear voices and they are able to persuade her to do certain things. Then Sara vaguely starts to ask Christy for advice about having to kill Ethan. Her question was basically, you know, would you do one bad thing to save everyone who's stuck there? And Christy is led to believe that Sara's question is purely hypothetical, and she says yes, she would do it, not knowing that her answer has now given Sara the confidence she needs to follow through with attempting to kill Ethan. The next day we see that the Matthews have written a lot more questions on the walls regarding the town, but Tabitha tells Jim that there's still one question that they still haven't asked, but the reason why she hasn't brought it up yet is because she doesn't want to know the answer to it. And of course we all know what this question is, but I will hold on to it until it happens later in the recap. Then we cut back to Christy, who by the grace of God makes it through the night with the killer Sara. And then over at Colony House we see Julie and Fatima discussing the list that Julie made of loved ones that she left behind back home. Fatima reveals that her and others have also made the list, which is actually a pretty depressing way to spend your free time, so Fatima tells Ellis that they need to take a break for the day because of Julie making the list, and they can kind of get away and get their mind off of that. Then we cut to Jade, who's still walking around with the radio when he runs into Trudy, who reveals to him that she would have rode him like a horse if he would have chose to live in Colony House. So yeah, Trudy's a freak, but Jade seems to pay her no mind because he's more focused on getting the radio to work rather than busting busting some nuts, and then he heads inside the gas station. Then we cut to the police station where we see Boyd staring at the map, and he tells Kenny that he needs him to hold things down and be in charge while he goes to visit his wife because it's been quite some time since he's paid her a visit. You know, I love how Boyd always takes a talisman with him for protection. I think it's just great attention to detail within the show because it just says a lot without actually needing to verbally say anything at all. But then we jump back to Jade at the gas station where he's surprised as hell to find out that they made it into a bar, because once again, Jade doesn't understand why these people aren't actively trying to find a way out instead of sitting around drinking. And the bartender Tom basically explains to Jade that some people currently need a place like this rather than a gas station because no one's going anywhere. Later in the conversation, Jade talks about how this place is a paradox. Then Tom tells Jade that the paradox is basically Schrodinger's cat, which is a thought experiment where a cat is placed in a box, and after the box is closed, that cat is theoretically alive and dead at the same time. Tom explains the correlation to Jade by telling him that they represent the cat, and the town represents the box, and the people outside don't know whether or not if they are alive or dead, and how to them they are theoretically both things at the same time. Then Jade is like, who the fuck is this guy? Because obviously Jade is normally used to being the smartest person in the room, but then we actually find out that Tom used to be a philosophy professor at USC. Then we jump to Sara, who's paying Ethan a visit, and we see that she has the scalpel from the clinic in her pocket before she approaches the house. Upstairs, Tabitha points out that Ethan's injury is healing very fast, and Ethan responds by telling her that he thinks that this place is special. He says although it tries to kill them, he thinks that it also might be trying to help them as well. And I definitely believe little Ethan is onto something, and I'm curious if the fast healing of Ethan's injury has anything to do with the way time works there. But it doesn't seem like anyone is rapidly aging, so maybe it only affects those who are injured, which we probably would have been able to prove this theory if Sara hadn't killed Toby, since he was the only other injured person from the wreck. Then Sara goes inside to greet the Matthews and hang out with Ethan. During this time, Nathan goes to the church to tell Father Khatri about Sara, but he's not there. In the meantime, we jump back to Fatima, Ellis, and Julie at the Brundle, which I guess is the name of their hangout spot, whatever the fuck that means. But during this scene, we find out that the name of this episode comes from Fatima's childhood story back when she lived in Iran, and how one day on her birthday, some men showed up and dragged her father out of the house, and she explains how the sun outside was so bright that she could only see her father's silhouette when they dragged him outside and shot him down. So this scene explains why Fatima is always in such a good mood, since she promised herself that she would never let monsters scare her ever again. Back at the Matthews, Sara offers to take Ethan to go see the goats and the chickens. Sara tries to get Tabitha to stay while she takes Ethan alone, but she insists that she will join with them. Now that's a mother's intuition for your ass. Then we cut to Boyd visiting his wife Abby's grave, where he tells her about everything, along with the difficult decisions he has when it comes to leading the people of the town, and he tells her that he needs help or some kind of sign from her. Then we jump to Nathan, who finally finds Father Khatri, and Nathan expresses to him how he would like to make a confession. And during this time, we see Tabitha, Ethan, and Julie at the barn, where Sara starts to tell Tabitha that it's good to know about all the hiding locations in the town just in case of an emergency, and she tells Tabitha that there's actually one in the barn that she would like to show her. Then we cut back to Nathan, who has informed Father Khatri about Sara, and now the two of them have to rush back to town to warn everyone. During this time, we see that Sara traps Tabitha inside the barn, and for some reason it just seemed like Tabitha made this shit way too easy for Sara. Then we jump to Nathan, who arrives at the diner looking for Sara, but Tom tells him that Sara went to the barn with Tabitha and Ethan. Then back at the barn, we see Sara approaching Ethan with the scalpel, but Nathan shows up just in time to save Ethan, and then he gets into a scuffle with Sara, and while trying to restrain Sara, she breaks free and slits his damn throat. And you know what? I gotta say, that is probably the cleanest damn throat slit mistake I have ever seen in my damn life. I mean, Sara is obviously a natural. Then while Nathan slowly bleeds out, Father Khatri finally arrives. Then Ethan runs away to find Julie, and as the rest of the town finds out and approaches the barn, Jim shows up and hears Tabitha screaming inside the barn and goes inside to let her out. So the weirdest thing about this scene to me is that before Jim approaches the barn, there's already a crowd of people outside standing near the barn, who for some reason is unable to hear Tabitha inside screaming, but as soon as Jim shows up, he's able to hear her immediately. So yeah, my assumption is that everyone outside just said fuck Tabitha, let her ass rot in there. And of course I'm just joking, but I thought it was pretty funny that they did her like that. Afterwards, Jim and Tabitha scramble to find Ethan, who they eventually find safe with Julie. And I gotta say, I just love Boyd's expression in this scene because he's just looking like, God damn it, I've only been gone for 2 seconds. Like, what the fuck? So later Boyd and Father Khatri approach the Matthews to check in, and Jim kind of goes off on Boyd like it was his fault. And I was just thinking in this scene like, come on Jim, just like in the outside world you have control over who you choose to trust. So yeah, don't try to put this shit on Boyd trying to come from my favorite character and shit, like what's wrong with you? But anyway, back at the Matthews house we see Tabitha finally writing down the mystery question she brought up earlier, which is, did we survive the crash? So it looks like we are finally going to explore one of the more popular theories of the show, which is, what if everyone there is dead and they are trapped in some type of purgatory? Personally, I don't think they are dead because one, they are all missing from the outside world along with their vehicles, and number two, they seem to be able to get a very faint radio signal from their location. And even Tom tells Jade earlier in this episode that maybe if he's able to get the radio to work, they can communicate with the outside world and let everyone know that they're still alive. So yeah, those are my thoughts, but we'll see. Then we jump back to Boyd talking to Christy at the diner where we see her feeling guilty about Nathan's death. Since Sara stole the murder weapon from the clinic, she feels responsible, but Boyd assures her that it wasn't her fault. During this time, Boyd finally gets his sign, which is the song If I Had a Boat by Lyle Lovett begins to play on that magical jukebox in the diner, and that's where episode 5 ends. Now currently this song doesn't mean anything to the viewers at the moment, but we'll get more context in upcoming episodes that will help you guys understand the significance of the song. And also, how the hell is Ethan able to heal so quickly from his injuries? I mean, maybe this only happens because we know he's special? I don't know, what do you guys think? And also, what are you guys' thoughts on the whole radio thing? I mean, do you think it means something significant or nah? But as usual, let me know you guys' thoughts down below. So there you have it, and if you enjoyed the content, you know what to do. Thank you for watching.